The words that shape pain. How could it be that your words can actually impact the way that you feel? By the end of this talk, you're going to have a little bit more depth with leading authority, Anne Marie Strauss, here to help us talk about this very thing today. Anne Marie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous, Ahmed. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's unbelievable to think it's almost the beginning of September. Time always seems to fly.
I know, and summer especially goes faster than any other season, in my opinion.
That's a really good point. I wish winter went that way. I'm a winter baby, but for
Uh,
me, I just always felt more alive during the summer. Like people are out, people are having more fun, and it's just a better time. But I'm glad to be finishing off the summer with somebody like you. We obviously met a few years ago at a networking event, and since then, it's been amazing to see like your own personal growth and all of the cool things that you've really been doing. So, can you give us a little bit of a background as to how you got to this point? Tell us your story.
okay, so I'm a speaking and communication coach now. I got to this point through my how I started my career as a speech language pathologist. So I'm a licensed and certified speech language pathologist, and I started my career in education working with children with special needs. And although they were greatly challenged, they were determined communicators. And they taught me the power of communication. When I left the educational setting, I decided to transition into the corporate world and take that power and share it with adults in the workplace, in the business setting, in the corporate setting. Because, in my opinion, communication, whether it's in the working environment, professional environment, or our personal lives, is the thread that ties us together. So that's how I got to this place, and I love it.
Yeah, yeah, I love that for you too because to hear how you went from learning from kids to then helping people use the power of their voice to communicate is a really big deal, especially because I find that with the way that the world is transitioning from this kind of soft skill and human touch point kind of field to something that's a little bit more robotic with the rise of AI and everything else. I think communication has been at the forefront of a lot of people's mind, especially when I look at younger generations and their abilities to communicate and the direction that that's headed. To me, I think about how are we going to come up as a society and see everybody really play play out their lives in the way that they want, because it's impossible to actually be able to make an impact without getting other people on board and communicating your message to people. So with that being said, when you think about communication, what comes to mind for you?
I think about communication in terms of essentially at its most basic level is making your immediate wants and needs known. From the time we were born, when we first started speaking and communicating, we had no words. We would use gesture or crying or laughing, whatever, or pointing, whatever it may be, to express ourselves. And then over time, we learn the words and the vocabulary to interact with others and support our lives with what we wanted to do and what was important in the moment. And then on the flip side, of course, is the communication is between two or more people. So learning to be a good listener and hearing what the people that you're with are saying and be able to comment or act accordingly based on that.
Yeah, it's not just about what you say, but how you take in what other people are saying to you.
Correct.
The idea of illustrating your needs and wants to people is something that I find interesting. And here's what I mean by that. I think there are so many different lenses to think about humans and when I say this, I say it in the most philosophical sense I can possibly say it in. Sometimes people look at describing their needs and wants as something that's selfish, and it stops people from actually asking for what they want. And then what typically ends up happening is they bottle things in, and I think this is where stress comes into play.
Hmm.
What do you think is one of the main things that keeps people from actually being able to talk about their needs and wants?
That is actually a very deep question, Ahmed. There's so many layers to that. Some of it is cultural, some of it is environmental in the sense of the house that you were raised in and the rules and norms that were part of your upbringing. For some, and I know I was one of them, and some of that is generational, you didn't ask for things. It just was not part of the repertoire. And so, as an adult, then to try to all of a sudden start more freely asking for things you want, and by that I don't mean, oh, I want a new car, I want a new handbag, just your most, even sometimes your most basic needs, it becomes more challenging. So there is a whole psychological component to that, in addition to the words and the communication and how the words are spoken.
Yeah, I read this book back in the day called Crucial Accountability, and it's a book basically talking about how to keep people accountable to things. And the reason I'm thinking about that now is because when you talk about people's upbringing and how they're taught to communicate, or not communicate, a really big part of that does stem, I think, from their beliefs. Um, and and when people have certain beliefs that are keeping them from actually talking about what they need or what they want, I think that's when people start to fall into trouble. Are there specific, when you talk about different generations, are there specific limiting beliefs that you find people from different generations tend to have?
In my experience, and I don't have the research regarding this at my fingertips, but the younger generation seems to be, at least using social media, more able to ask or demonstrate what they want or like. Uh, Regarding the older generations, and again, it goes from even from the baby boomer, let's start with that generation on, the culture of, for example, we're talking about health and pain and doctors, let's say, their mindset was very different than the mindset of many people now, in terms of even something as simple as getting a second opinion. For some older adults, that option doesn't come to them naturally, and often they have to be persuaded by their children or their grandchildren. So there is a generational component to that. And
Before we get into a different point here, where do you think that comes from?
where do I think what comes from? The
Where do you think that this idea of a second opinion not coming naturally to somebody who's a baby boomer, for example, where does that come from? Why do they not naturally come up with, oh, I should get a second opinion?
There could be many reasons, but my point of view is it relates to much more of a hierarchical uh, perception of society, and the
Mm,
doctors at the higher level, and there's more of a respect for like, the, the different levels of command. Let's say, that's a military word, so that's not really the right word
no, no,
here,
I see
but
what you're saying though.
but again, uh, it's hard to say. Just that's just based on my observation.
I I feel like you're onto something with that for sure because when I think about it, I remember back in college, I took a class that was looking at like different cultures, and they they basically had different qualitative metrics regarding how cultures think about certain things. So one of the things, for example, was how they look at authority. And so some places, for example, like let's say North Korea looks at authority a very different way as somebody, for example, here in the States. And
Hmm.
but even within that, you have different subsets of people that I think look at authority differently compared to other subsets of people. So that definitely makes sense to me. What has so communication, if it's describing what your needs and wants are, what's the cost of not being able to communicate your needs and wants?
The cost to each individual personally can be frustration, and that frustration can manifest itself in many different ways, depending on who, the relationship with whoever it is they're communicating with or not communicating with. And sometimes it could, the other side of that is sometimes an individual may be communicating, but the other person, again, as we said, the communication is a two-way street. They may
Mhm.
not be receiving it for whatever reason. So is it really, and then this is where always you have to delve in, is it really the person's not communicating it, or is it that the person or people they're communicating to are not ready or willing to receive that information?
That's an important idea, the fact that it's a two-way street. One of the things you were talking about is frustration. And I think emotions and how they can impact you is it can never be understated. I remember my mom would always tell me this story where, unfortunately, one day, I think my dad had to call 911 because she wasn't feeling too well. And so she gets into the ambulance, and the medic who's taking care of her basically says something along the lines of, "Stress can kill you, ma'am. Stress can kill you." And my mom always tells me this story, like whenever I tell her that I'm feeling stressed or something. Uh, and there is research to suggest from people like Dr. Amen, who is a brain expert, and some other folks as well that talk about this idea that emotions can lead to not just psychological pain, but to pain in your knees or pain in your back. And there have
Hmm.
been books written about this very idea. Do you think that not being able to communicate can result in a downgrading of your health?
When you say not being able to communicate, that's such a broad term. So what do you mean specifically, really? Is
Yeah.
not being having the specific words to describe their pain or the particular issue that they're dealing with, or not being able to communicate, because there are some individuals who are communicatively challenged, even older adults, perhaps due to a stroke
Mm,
or other physical accidents that could have occurred, brain injury, or situations that arise from birth.
yeah. No, I'm glad you're looking at it from all of these different points of view. Let me rephrase my question. When someone is experiencing pain or stress, what happens to the way they communicate?
Well, pain, from my observations of pain, usually often causes an individual to be short-tempered, limited patience, maybe not as agreeable to engaging in social interaction or participate in social events, which then that has a snowballing effect, because those types of events, social events and being with other people, are positive influences on a person's mental health and well-being. So not being able to express those feelings and keeping that frustration can cause multiple other situations that are negative for that person and the people that they're with.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point too. I think I think about when I hurt my back really badly back in June, and
Mm.
And so one day I was going to a restaurant out with my wife and some of our other friends, and as I was heading there, I was in so much pain that like literally I was hobbling to the restaurant. My wife had to really like slow things down, and we were taking things step by step, but it didn't feel so good just not being able to walk the way that I used to walk. And then having to kind of communicate like, "Oh, can you slow down?" And actually having the words to be able to do that and doing it in the right setting and everything like that was really sobering for me because I think that these frustrations that people feel when they have pain and then how it impacts other people, kind of like what you were touching on there, is really important.
Mhm.
Um, what okay, let me ask you this. How can the words we say influence a situation? Meaning, if we're going through something, a challenge, how can we be able to communicate that in an effective way?
Well, again, so many things come into place. At I Speak Clearly, we utilize our unique framework called your communication hue. Hear, understand, engage. If you're the person in pain, you want the person or people that you're with to hear what you're experiencing. So, and in order for them to do that, and one, you have to have the words, the vocabulary to express that. And then two, if it's a one-time thing, it's different than chronic pain. That is, a situation that persists over time. The tone of your voice, how you're engaging them, can impact how the person reacts to it, because there are different ways you could say, my back hurts, or, oh, my back hurts. I'm not gonna come today. My back hurts. My back hurts. I don't want to go. Those same words have a different impact on the person that they're being said to, and influences what happens after that. So being aware is always the
Hmm.
first step. Aware of the words you're choosing, how those words are being spoken, and then awareness of how the people you're with are reacting to what you say,
Hmm.
and what do you want them to do about it. That's more in your realm of men, in terms of the pain, and what to do about that pain.
Yeah, there. Listen, I'm no expert in pain, but what I will say is that pain is complicated, and there are so many factors that go into it. The way I think about pain is your brain gets a lot of information from your body and from the outside world, and then it takes in that information, and then it has you feel something. Now, that something could be an emotion that you like or don't like. It could be a feeling in your body that you like or don't like. But the bottom line is it has a lot to do with how you interact with the world. And in the example that you gave, I love that framework, Hugh. So heard, understand, explain. Is that right?
Engage. So the engage part is about your tone of voice, your body language, your facial expressions. When you talked
Ah.
about going to dinner with your wife, for example, and her friends. Now, again, I know you, so I'm thinking you were aware of who is around you and being your pleasant self. But some people are not able to do that. So, in that situation, if they're in a lot of pain and, let's say, being strongly encouraged to go, then what's happening with the other people? Are they engaging, or are they distancing people from them with their facial expression and their body language, and perhaps the tone that they use to answer any question not related to their own physical uh, feelings at the moment? And now it becomes not just one person's uh, situation, but the whole group. And
Hmm.
so being aware of all of that.
Yeah. And then when that happens, you're not pleasant at dinner, and then the night doesn't go the way you wanted it to go. And yeah, I get kind of where that's going. The I see how we're talking a lot about how our communication strategies affect other people. I guess that is the bottom line of communication, right? How you interact and affect other people.
Yes, and yourself, though, also how you talk to yourself. There's a lot of science and research about the words you choose to talk to yourself. I'll take step away from pain for a minute and we'll go to golf because I love to play golf. I'm an avid golfer. And pro athletes, the pro golfers, they get coached in this as well. So if you hit a bad shot and you say, "Oh, I'm terrible driving the ball off the tee. I never hit it straight. I can't do this." Well, you're telling your brain you can't do this. So
Mm,
the word you choose for yourself, whether it's about playing golf or socializing or even pain, can influence your general overall feeling. And it's something to be aware of. One of the
mm.
first, yeah,
The self-talk is such an important element. There's this quote, I'm not sure who it's from, but it's basically if you think you can or if you think you can't, right? You're right either
you're
way.
right.
So
That's Henry Ford, if I'm pretty, almost 100%, almost
there you go.
100% certain that's
Yeah,
Henry
yeah,
Ford.
but self-talk. I know we moved away for pain for a second, but for a lot of my listeners, I mean, our title is the words that shape pain, right? And so with that being said, how can our self-talk actually impact our pain?
Well, it's like it's anything else. The more attention you give to something, positive or negative, the more it grows. I speak clearly. We use a mindfulness-based approach to speaking and communication. And by that, because we employ some of the breathing strategies and techniques that are a part of mindfulness, but they're also essential for a voice. Your voice, your breath is fuel for your voice. So being aware of your breath, just from the perspective of speaking, is very important to create a voice that's dynamic. The other part of that is noting is something, a term they use in mindfulness. So you feel a pain, let's say you mentioned knees before, you feel a pain in your knee. So you say, "Oh, I'm feeling a little," and pick a word. The I don't know what word it would be. Are you going to say, "I feel the most debilitating pain in my knee," or "I'm feeling a pain in my knee," and not magnify it? So
Hmm.
my suggestion would be pick the words that most accurately describe what you're feeling. If it's small, then pick a word that tells that. Or if it's, out of control, grand, then pick a word that tells that. And I'm not trying to trivialize it, but being aware of that because what happens, for example, with children when they're little, and for anyone who's ever been around young children, each child is different and how they tolerate pain is different. So two children fall on the driveway, they both skin their knee to the same exact degree. One gets up, kind of brushes it off and keeps going. The other one screams, say bloody murder for a considerable amount of time, and it takes a lot of consoling. So we all experience pain differently. That's number one, and that's no one's discounting that. But the other piece of that is if it's a small pain, then let the people know the scope of it, because then when that big pain comes or something really drastic is happening, you want them to react accordingly. So being aware of the language that you're using in all these different experiences because they impact the reaction of the people that you're with.
Yeah, having the awareness as that first step is actually harder than I think most people even think about because one of the things that I found too is when it comes to describing pain, for example, there are so many different words that you can use You can say it's burning, you can say it's sore, you can say there's a crunching, you can say there are all these different words that as a trainer, for example, when I'm talking to somebody about what they're feeling, I have to really keep track of the words that they're using and try to decipher it the best that I possibly can. Because ultimately what they're experiencing and how they are how they're thinking about it and how they're communicating it is this very complex process that I have to be really in tune with.
Hmm.
And I think you gave a few good suggestions there as far as if it's small, or relatively smaller insofar as the intensity of the pain, communicate that, and if it's relatively big, to communicate that too. One of the things that I often do with people is I say something like, "Hey, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being nothing, 10 being the worst pain you can ever imagine. Like, where's your pain?" Question for you. What do you think of that? Or what would you change about the way that I say that, if anything?
Oh, I think a measure or rating scale like that, a numeric scale, is helpful not only for you but also for the person. That in on any given day they can, you know, they know intuitively where it is. So being able to express that is helpful for themselves, because maybe one day it was a 9, but now they wake up this morning it's a 5. Well, that's a positive feeling because it's less. Or for the people that they're with, to put it in perspective. Another suggestion along those lines is to keep a journal. We could call it a I want to feel good journal. And every day writing down not just the pain, but also when you wake up in the morning, what feels good? Oh, my arms feel free and feel flexible this morning. I can stretch and spread my arms. There's a tinge of ache in my back, whatever it may be, and the details of where you were or when it was, or maybe something precipitated that pain. What was that? When was that? That type of thing.
Yeah, keeping note of what's going on, what's good and what isn't so good. That's totally powerful. It's funny you say like a twinge. I think there are also these different words that people will use. Back to this idea of different generations have different ways of communicating. Like I remember I have this amazing client, and she was telling me that she felt a crick in her neck,
Hmm.
and um I that was the first time I ever heard that word. And then so on my end I really had to clarify like what exactly that means. And that's where I think that on the person receiving the communication, what are some tools that you think people can employ to help clarify things that they're hearing from others?
Mhm. I think for the person listening, the same rules that any person in pain or not in pain, any as a communicator would use, called to active listening. So if you're not really sure, ask for clarification. If you think you understand, repeat it back in a different way to make sure to I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're describing. That's how you build the framework of what, if you're getting it right or you're totally off base, and they'll have a better sense that you understand or you don't.
Yeah, clarifying things is important. What happens when you ask for clarification and somebody doesn't like that?
You say, if you don't feel comfortable sharing, I understand. I mean, you can't force someone to ask to clarify, or if they can't clarify, maybe verbally, is there another way you could show me? It depends on, again, this would always depends on who you're talking to, what's their mindset about it. Are they happy to be sharing this information with you, or doing it under the duress or force by someone else, saying, this, let's say a child or a spouse. Uh, it would really be depending on, so there you'd have to handle that based on the situation.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess the one side of that too is recognizing that if somebody doesn't want to clarify something, that there's some type of discomfort, whether that's in relationship to sharing it with you, whether that's in how they think about it within themselves, whether there's like a shame or a frustration or something
Mm-hmm.
else that they're still battling with within themselves. I think that's something to definitely keep in mind. You never know what somebody's going through, you know?
No, very true, very true. And nothing is as simple as, say a word and you have a pain, say a word and it's done. As we said right from the beginning of our conversation here together tonight, there are so many layers, upbringing, culture, and a host of other things that a person's psychological or mental state at any given moment based on external factors in their lives that we have no idea about unless they choose to share it. So there are so many pieces to the puzzle. And, doctors have to gather all those pieces to make accurate diagnoses and recommendations for treating these pains and illnesses. It's not an easy job.
No, no, I can't imagine that is. With so with all these external factors and with so many things coming at people, I remember you talking about mindfulness. Like, what exactly does that mean to you?
At its core, it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment,
Hmm.
not non-judgmentally, as that's John Kabat-Zinn's basic definition. He's a master of mindfulness, and he had developed a mindfulness-based stress reduction back in the 70s, and that was this one of the many, I think, springboards to attention to mindfulness because it is scientifically proven to have health benefits, not just on reducing stress, but also cardiovascular and mental and other health issues. And there's a lot you could read on that if any of you choose to by Googling to get more detail. But at its essence, it's your breath. So why don't we do a breathing exercise together?
Okay.
So when we talk about breathing for mindfulness and also for the benefits of breathing on your body and your voice, we're talking about a diaphragmatic breath. And essentially what that means is sometimes it's a diaphragmatic breath. Sometimes it's referred to as abdominal breathing and sometimes belly breathing. Because what happens is when you breathe in through your nose and you fill your lungs to capacity, they expand and they push down on the diaphragm, which is a muscle below your lungs. So as your lungs expand, they push down on your diaphragm and your belly extends. And then as you exhale, your abdomen contracts. Well, I invite you and your listeners to sit, and you want to sit with as best you can on an elongated spine because you want to open the pathway for the breath. If you're all crunched over, now the air doesn't have a smooth road. Think about driving your car. You want to drive down a straightaway. It doesn't have a straightaway. So sitting up as best you can straight, put your hands on your belly or your abdomen and breathe in through the nose. Exhale through the mouth. Do you feel a rise and fall of your abdomen, Amen? In through
Yeah,
the
feels good.
nose. Yeah, it feels good. Out through the mouth. If you close your eyes, if it feels comfortable, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Let's do it one more time. In through the nose, out through the mouth. How did that feel?
Yeah, I feel relaxed. I feel relaxed. I love that.
Yes. And that's one of the features of it. It does help you feel relaxed, helps you narrow your focus, you feel the rise and fall of your abdomen. And you can, while you're sitting there, sometimes you do a body scan in mindfulness. So you can, with your eyes closed, especially, think about your feet or your knees in your mind, travel across or up or down your body, and give attention or awareness to each of those pieces. And as we said before with the journal, acknowledge those parts of you that feel good today. It may be your mind, it may be your smile, whatever it may be, and bring that into your day and into your vocabulary that you're using and sharing with the people that you're with, and your doctors for sure, and you, Ahmed, who's helping to
Hmm.
relieve pain.
Yeah. It's really interesting because the way that I look at it, even something like your breathing is so powerful. I train my parents. I think I may have mentioned that to you on the weekends, and I remember one day I actually gave my dad a breathing exercise to do. And one of the things he would say to me is that when he would stand and wash his dishes, after some time, he'd feel his lower back. Since
Mm.
he started doing these breathing exercises, he doesn't feel that anymore.
Huh.
And one of the things that you were bringing up, for example, was like your diaphragm and being able to use that muscle in a optimal way so that it can help you, at least in my case, like we just did, relax. But I think it's also powerful in so many different ways. A lot of people don't consider breathing and its impact on your posture, for example. When you think about posture and its impact on communication, what comes to mind for you?
Many things come to mind. I'll start with the breathing. So one, the posture is giving your airway the best opportunity to flow freely and strongly from your lungs and up your throat, out your mouth, to create a strong, powerful voice. But in the business world, especially, posture is one of the ways individuals exude their executive presence. If you walked into a room, and, or I should say, if you were in a meeting and someone walked into the room standing tall with good posture, shoulders back, they're conveying confidence. They have a presence. Versus if somebody comes in, you know, not necessarily concerned about their posture, sort of slumped and casual, and not using their body and their posture to convey their mindset and their attitude.
Yeah, I think presence and the way you can communicate that through the nonverbals that we're talking about here plays a humongous role in actually um, giving off impressions, whether it's a first impression that's really important for you to make, or whether that's just describing how you feel. Because one of the things, for example, is the posture and your breathing. It's so intimately linked, not just when it comes to communication, because that's an incredibly important element, but even in how your body controls your spine. So for example, when you inhale, your spine is more likely to extend. When you exhale, your spine is more likely to flex and bend. And the reason for that is because everything works together as a system. Once your lungs expands with air, your rib cage expands, and then you basically have very little choice insofar as your spine actually extending and being able to stand up straighter. So to that idea and that example, I'd say if somebody is having a hard time thinking about the shoulders back idea and standing up tall, one way to help you get into that place is to take a deep inhale and then just kind of feel for what happens between your shoulder blades and how
Mm.
your chest rises towards the ceiling. Because you can use your breathing to help facilitate that.
Oh, that's a, I like that connection and that link. That's a strategy I will share. And
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of times it's awareness and have, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
no, please keep going.
Oftentimes it's a habit. We, so much of our speaking, our communication, really, most of what we do all day in every aspect of our life is based on habit and routine. And our brain likes certainty, and it likes to do what it's always done. So if you never really cared that much about posture, because and again, some of this could be upbringing. In some families, no one's telling anyone to sit up straight. But in other families, that's that's a requirement. That's something they've been made aware of since a young age. So there are going to be differences, but you can change. You can make those changes for yourself if you're physically able to, obviously, by using some of the breathing exercises, as Ahmed said, that's going to help your posture, and being aware of the feeling of how that feels for yourself when you're in that position. And is there a change in your mindset and your attitude when you're in that more upright position?
Yeah, it's hard to feel small when you're standing up tall. I didn't mean for that to sound like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. But the back to the posture idea for one more second. A lot of the times people think they don't have the strength to have good posture, but most often they actually do. And really what's keeping them from improving their posture is this awareness piece. Because to your point, some people are brought up, maybe they come from military families where that's just how they are, right? And the messaging that they got from their parents growing up. So with that being said, just to show people that typically they do have the strength to make sure that they're in a posture that they'd like to be in to feel like they're taking a presence. I'm going to suggest that they try something like imagining like they're squeezing something between their armpits to allow their shoulders to come back and to think about almost like somebody is pressing through the top of their head. And in that sense, that can give people a lot more straightness through their spine, which will give them the appearance of standing up taller.
Yeah,
So,
very interesting. Different techniques.
yeah.
I've never heard those. See, we all learn from each other.
And I think when all these techniques come together, that's when people really are able to take their health to the next level. Because I always think about communication as something that's really, really important, not just to your health, but something that's important even within my practice. Like one of the things I tell people is I have an open communication policy. And so that means I'll be truthful with you, and I'm hoping for the same in return. But with that being said, habits. What's one communication habit someone watching us tonight can practice as soon as possible?
The communication habit that I would recommend, something you can incorporate every day, is the breathing. 1 minute of breathing. Either if you, for some people, it may be difficult to do it from a sitting position, uh, but if you could either stand up straight or lie flat on the floor, not without any pillows or anything, and just gently close your eyes, set a timer for 1 minute, and breathe the rise and fall of your abdomen, feeling relaxed, but also during that time, bringing awareness to the parts of your body and give yourself that mindset to be ready to communicate and speak when the minute is up.
Mm. And how would you sum up this mindset that people should maybe strive to?
That could vary I would say to, again, it's the word you choose. Ready to say hello to the day, ready to say hello to whoever it may be that you're going to see first. It could be your pet. It could be just to the world, to nobody. And it's interesting. One of the podcasts that I listen to about brain development, they talk about practicing, which I talk about practicing. Practicing is important. And just like anything else, the brain can create new neural pathways for you to learn a new skill, but you have to practice it. And with speaking, if you're trying to memorize a speech or something important, you have to repeat it and practice it. And he talks about talking to your plant. You see my plant behind me. So I don't have a pet here, but I could talk to my plant and practice
It is
that.
alive. Hmm.
So so practice, and there is research on that too, that plants that are, this is an interesting study I heard about not that long ago, where if you, plants that were touched or spoken to at least once a day thrived more than the plants that were ignored. It's a fascinating study. So if you like your research, I would highly recommend looking for that one.
I love that. I love that stuff. I love that stuff. Yeah, it's there's so much power in your words.
Yes.
We're
We're
back.
back.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
I I
I
I don't
I don't
remember
remember
where we
where
were
we were
at
at
because
because
I'm
I'm
not a
not a
technical
technical
difficulties
difficulties
kind of
kind of
guy.
guy.
So
So
let's
let's
just
just
jump
jump
into
into
talking
talking
about
about
habits,
habits,
and we were
and we were
talking
talking
about
about
breathing
breathing
and
and
how
how
important
important
that
that
is to
is to
helping
helping
put you
put
in
you
the
in the
mindset
mindset
to
to
put
put
out
out
the
the
energy
energy
out
out
there
there
that you
that you
need to
need to
put
put
out,
out,
whether
whether
it's to
it's to
your
your
plants
plants
or
or
whether
whether
it's to
it's
the
to the
people
people
that you
that you
love.
love.
Yes, that's
Yes.
where we had wrapped it up, and I think it's a great strategy to be able to be aware of your habits, decide what new habits you'd like to cultivate, and take the steps to make that happen.
All right, before
Before
closing
closing
words, I
words, I
just
just
want
want
to
to
answer
answer
one
one
of
of
the
the
preset
preset
questions
questions
that we
that we
got,
got,
and it was
and it was
actually
actually
regarding
regarding
balance,
balance,
which I
which I
think
think
is
is
interesting in
interesting
the
in the
context
context
of
of
posture.
posture.
It was
It was
asking
asking
like
like
what are
what
the
are the
points to
points to
pay
pay
important
important
excuse me, what are
what
the
are the
points
points
that are
that are
important to
important to
consider
consider
when
when
it
it
comes to
comes to
keeping
keeping
good
good
balance?
balance?
Do
Do
you
you
have
have
any
any
suggestions
suggestions
as
as
far
far
as
as
feeling
feeling
balanced
balanced
on
on
stage
stage
or
or
as you're
as you're
speaking to
speaking to
somebody when
somebody
you're
when you're
performing?
performing?
For speaking on stage and generally speaking in front of a room, my guidance is to stand both feet flat on the floor as the trunks of the tree so that you are not going back and forth and shifting your weight. So keeping your weight stable, both feet on the floor, and to be aware when you're walking and moving, what's around you, what's near you, and take it into account.
Great
Great
advice.
advice.
Thank you,
Thank
Anne
you, Anne
Marie.
Marie.
Any
Any
closing
closing
words
words
before we
before we
go?
go?
I would like to say it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Ahmed. There is a lot of similarities in some of the body pieces of our awareness and our bodies that are similar in what we do. And you know, I'm so grateful to share what I know with what you are doing, and I look forward to more conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and where
and
can
where can
people
people
find you?
find
I'm
you?
just
I'm just
going to
going to
drop
drop
your
your
website and
website and
phone
phone
number
number
here.
here.
Yes, ispeakclearly.com. It tells more about I Speak Clearly and the coaching that I do. And there is also a contact link there. If anyone would like to have a conversation, I'd be more than happy to spend 30 minutes with you and learn about your pain or your pain relief. And there's a phone
Perfect.
number as well.
Yep,
Yep,
631 335.
6225. Oh, there's one extra number in there.
There's an extra two there, huh?
It's 631
6265.
6225, correct.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And I
And I
heard you
heard you
have
have
a
a
little
little
gift
gift
for
for
people.
people.
Yes, I have a Be Heard at Your Next Healthcare Appointment. It's a guide for communication strategy, both in some of the preparing for your appointment and what to do and say when you get there so that it is you make the most benefit with your time with your doctor. So if anybody is interested in receiving a copy of that, you can email me at info@ispeakclearly.com with the subject line Be Heard, and I'll be happy to share that with you.
Yeah, you'll be getting an email from me. I'm really excited for that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're very welcome.
All right, everybody. That
That
was the
was the
words
words
that
that
shape
shape
pain
pain
with the
with the
leading
leading
authority on
authority on
communication.
communication.
Anne
Anne
Marie,
Marie,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. And thanks to all of you who are out there listening. I truly appreciate your time.
Perfect.